Cloud computing is all the rage as large enterprise organizations continue to shift technology investments from CapEx to OPEX. But the main drivers are speed, agility, and innovation. Large companies seek to modernize their information technologies, and cloud computing is their destiny. In this short video, we'll highlight some of the drivers and challenges, the various types of cloud computing, as well as perspective on the three major cloud service providers, or CSPs. And I'm certified across all three: AWS, Azure, and GCP. So sit tight as we dig into cloud computing.
TechGno, turning tech talk into biz talk.
Cloud computing is the delivery of compute, storage, and other services through the internet, including data storage, servers, databases, networking, and software. Cloud-based storage makes it possible to save files to a remote database and then retrieve them on demand. And just to clarify what we mean when we say cloud, these are massive server farms that, in my view, are much like the telephone companies of old. And they're not farms, but rather data centers, massive and ever-growing. The big three are AWS, Azure, and GCP, or Google Cloud Platform. More on these gorillas later. When thinking of the various types of cloud computing, it can be helpful to think of it as a layer cake. The base layer is known as IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. And just like a base layer, this is typically just basic IT infrastructure, such as servers, storage, and networks. The next layer is PaaS, or platform as a service. This is more than just the baseline hardware, as the application itself and the associated platform are provided. The last layer is SaaS, software as a service. Salesforce was a big leader here, as they provided everything and users simply needed to log in and go. Now let's take a quick look at the four types of cloud deployments. The public cloud, shared compute services hosted by a CSP or other provider. The private cloud is a virtualized environment which is on-premise to a client company. And the hybrid cloud, just like it sounds, refers to a combination of cloud and on-premise environments. And lastly, the multi-cloud. In my experience, most enterprise organizations are multi-cloud, meaning they have cloud systems with more than one cloud provider or other host. On top of that, many application vendors provide managed services, which is a growing area, primarily due to skill gaps. Now that we've covered the layer cake and the different types of deployments, let's get back to the big three CSPs, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. I mentioned they remind me of telephone companies of old, as computing continues to shift to a utility model. The Big Switch was a great book that compared the compute journey to that of electricity, which only became a utility 100+ years ago. The three cloud service providers are AWS, Amazon Web Services, Azure, which is Microsoft, and GCP, or Google Cloud Platform. Each offers their own flavor of compute, storage, AI/ML, databases, networking, security, locations, pricing, and so much more. It's a competitive landscape, but many enterprise organizations are already aligned to a particular CSP. Perhaps the enterprise has a strong relationship with Google due to advertising, so GCP may have early traction there. Or perhaps your executive leadership team are Microsoft evangelists and heavily committed to that journey based on Microsoft Office tools being so ubiquitous. And what about AWS? I know you've heard of Amazon, but do you think that brand is as strong in corporate America, where Microsoft has been deeply embedded for scores, not merely the last couple of decades? In my view, it's okay to refer to them as behemoths, as GCP did more than $33 billion last year, a growth rate of nearly 30%, Azure is growing at a similar rate, but has $68 billion in cloud revenue. And well, surprise, surprise, as this view from Statista highlights AWS cloud revenues are marching toward $100 billion a year. Yes, cloud computing has arrived. We mentioned the main drivers of speed, agility, and innovation. But what Wall Street and finance departments are really excited about is the shift from CapEx to OPEX. You see, legacy on-premise systems owned by the enterprise required years of planning and significant investment, which is the capital expense or CapEx model. But the modern CSP approach is mostly a consumption model, pay-as-you-go, operational expense or OPEX model. And speaking of speed, the ability to immediately stand up a new system is phenomenal. And as for agility, most new development of technology is cloud native, meaning that if you want your systems to adapt to your needs, agility, you almost have to be in the cloud as a large enterprise, because some new feature sets simply are not immediately developed for legacy on-premise systems. And to me, the third driver of innovation is the true business value. Innovation that's driven by the speed and agility. Once your organization is more focused on executing the business plan instead of keeping the lights on, you'll begin to realize more innovation. But let's not explode with joy just yet, as cloud computing has some real downside risk that you need to account for. First of all, it's not just a different world, it's a different world that speaks different languages, as each CSP offers hundreds of compute, storage, networking, and other services that are individually branded. Like I mentioned, I'm certified across all three major cloud service providers. It can be like 3 different languages. Secondly, while it's also a different world, it's 2 worlds, because you have to account for the dual run, the running of both systems until complete and final transition, including decommissioning of the legacy system and the data center and real estate that housed them. Thirdly, there can be many unknowns, and you'll need to have checks and balances in place to ensure you don't suffer from these unknowns, such as skill gaps. Your people will need to ramp up on new offerings, and that likely will require new hires too. How about the unknown of ecosystem incompatibilities? And sadly, it's even more granular than that, as you not only need to be concerned with how your platform or application connects with all the other technologies in your own portfolio, but there's loads of scenarios where the technology vendor's own modern cloud offerings are not compatible with their very same product on premise. And the last unknown that I'll list is runaway costs. Yes, folks, speed and agility come with risk. Some of that risk is in the very consumption model that Wall Street loves as enterprise modernize with cloud computing. Yes, cloud computing may offer scale up, scale down, scale in, scale out, and all the flexibility in the world, but, and it's a big but, it's not always less expensive. And because these are large, complex enterprise systems with demanding service levels, you may find that systems have scaled beyond any standard cost projections. I can't count the number of large enterprises I've worked with whose systems costs exploded, primarily because they did not fully understand their system requirements and they did not have proper checks and balances in place to alert on peak usage. Cloud computing has come a long way since the ARPANET of the 1960s, or even the early days of electronic software distribution of the late 1990s. Today, it's nearly impossible for the modern enterprise not to be in the cloud. This is TechGno. We've covered a lot. We've got some other content too, and we're bringing out news daily and new features all the time. TechGno, turning tech talk into biz talk. We're here for you. And hey, hope to see you on the other side.
TechGno. It's Irish for business.
TechGno, turning tech talk into biz talk.